1 Kings chapter 21. We read
1 Kings 21.
We read that Naboth had a vineyard. King Ahab saw it and wanted it, and Naboth didn't want to sell it. Now the story you may be familiar with, it does not have a happy ending. Because Jezebel had Naboth taken to court. By Hebrew law, you needed 2 witnesses to secure the death penalty, and she made sure she has 2 witnesses. 1 Kings 21 verse 13 says, he was taken outside the city, and he was stoned to death. Because executions were carried on outside cities. It would have been unclean to execute a criminal within the walls of the city. Now Naboth lived in the north. He lived in the Jezreel Valley, a very fertile plain in the north of the country. But if you had lived in Jerusalem back in these days, and if the courts had found you guilty, and you were to be condemned to death by stoning, then they may have brought you right here, this area right below us here, where today this bus station is. This place here was a place of stoning, a place where the Jewish authorities punished criminals. Now, this bus station has only been here since the 1950s, and it's built on an ancient site here.
About this site.
This was an ancient stone quarry. Long before the time of Jesus, this had been quarried flat, and the stone that they quarried here contributed to the building works in the old city over there in ancient times. Now, when the Romans came to power here, they tried to stop stoning. They passed a law against it because they brought a new form of capital punishment here, crucifixion. And we believe they continue to carry out their public executions here. Now, where was Jesus crucified? I'm going to mention briefly 5 scriptures, and I believe they paint a picture for us. Matthew 27 verse 33 says, when they came to Golgotha, the place of the skull, there they crucified him. Golgotha. Now it was the Jews who called the place Golgotha, but it was the Romans who carried out the crucifixion. The Romans who carried out the crucifixion, and the Romans had a completely different name for the place, and that name is now famous around the world, because the Romans called the place Calvary. Calvary. That's why Golgotha and Calvary are one and the same place. And both of these words, in 2 different languages, mean the same thing, a skull. Jesus was crucified at the place of the skull. Now generations of people have looked up this hill behind me here and thought they could see a skull's face here. Now this picture of the hill right here, this picture of the hill was taken more than 130 years ago. At the time this picture was taken, there were no buildings outside the walls of the old city over here. This is all under, that's the northern wall of the city, just 250 meters from here. That's the north wall of the old city, just over there. It was all undeveloped land outside the walls. And you can see why people looking at this hill here, they would have called it the skull. And you can still see that area over there today. John 19 verse 20. It says that Pontius Pilate had a sign made. It was fixed to the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. But if you read on, that verse goes on and it says, and many of the Jews read this sign, because the place where Jesus was crucified was close to the city. You know Golgotha was close to the city. And as I just said, we're only 250 meters from the city. Hebrews 13 verse 12 says, Jesus suffered outside the city gate. Now the nearest gate is only 400 meters from here, the Damascus gate. Now that gate is old, but it doesn't date back to the time of Jesus. But the archaeologists have dug right below it. And underneath there's a Roman gate there. 400 meters from here. Now you can see the gate. They've opened up that whole bit. You can go down there and see the Roman gate. It's 400 meters from here. Mark 15 verse 29 tells us the people passing by were hurling insults at him. Now interestingly, in Luke's Gospel in chapter 23, Luke tells us that when Jesus breathed his last, he says, the people witnessing at the cross, they beat their breasts. And it says, a little further away, those who knew him, those who knew Jesus, who had followed him from the Galilee with the women, they witnessed him there. Luke says, a group witnessing at the cross, a group a little further away, the ones who knew Jesus. But Mark says there was people passing by, and they were hurling insults at him. So we know there was a roadway there, but these passers by, adjacent to where the cross was situated. The Romans always crucified people by the roadside. They did many crucifixions here. They did them by the main road outside the city gate, so as many people would see them as possible. And the last verse, John 19 verse 41. John 19 verse 41 says, at the place where Jesus was crucified there was a garden. And in the garden a new tomb, no body had yet been laid in. It was a new tomb. It had never been used before up until that day. And it goes on and says, because it was the Jewish day of preparation, the Shabbat, the Sabbath was coming in, and because the garden was nearby, they didn't have much time, they laid the body of Jesus there in that new tomb. Now if we put these 5 verses from the Bible together, this is what it tells us about the place where Jesus was crucified. It was close to the city. It was outside the city gate. It was next to a busy road. It was beside a garden with a new tomb at a place called Golgotha, the place of the skull. Now we might add just one more verse. Leviticus 1 verse 11 says, the atonement for sin should be a lamb without blemish, sacrificed on the north side of the altar. The north side. And this is the north wall of the city. This hill, part of the Mount Moriah range, sits on the north of the city. So you can see that these verses of scripture fit perfectly with this area right here. And that is the reason why many people believe this could be the area right here where Jesus was crucified. Now as I was growing up, I had a